I'm Lloyd, 28 now. But 10 years ago I was the kid who almost got a life-changing $250,000 scholarship, until my parents deliberately sabotaged my interview to protect my brother's fragile ego. They called me ungrateful when I left, then years later demanded I fund his business ventures. Their ultimate betrayal taught me that sometimes the family you're born into isn't the family you deserve. Let me know where you're watching from in the comments, and hit that subscribe button if you've ever had to choose between your dreams and your family's approval. Growing up in Oakfield, a middle-class suburb outside Detroit, Michigan, my childhood looked normal from the outside. Our two-story colonial house with the white picket fence on Maple Street portrayed the perfect American family image. But inside those walls, a different story unfolded. One of clear favorites and quiet resentment. My father, Gregory, worked as an accountant at a local firm. He'd been the star quarterback at Oakfield High back in the 80s. But his football career ended with graduation. He never went to college, something he both regretted and dismissed as unnecessary depending on the day and his mood. Dad lived vicariously through my older brother Brandon, pushing him into every sport possible and attending every game with religious devotion. My mother, Diane, managed the front office at a dental practice. She was obsessed with appearances, making sure our family projected the perfect image to neighbors, relatives, and her church friends. Nothing mattered more to her than what others thought of the family. She'd spend hours preparing for neighborhood barbecues, making sure everything looked magazine perfect. Then there was my brother Brandon, 2 years older than me, and the undisputed favorite child. Brandon got his athletic ability from our father, and his social charm from our mother. He played 3 sports, dated the popular girls, and maintained a solid C average that our parents never questioned. His room was decorated with trophies, medals, and team photos. The refrigerator door was a shrine to his athletic accomplishments. I was the opposite of Brandon in almost every way. Where he was loud and commanding, I was quieter and more thoughtful. While he excelled at sports, I found my place in books and academics. Brandon could charm a room within minutes. I preferred deeper conversations with fewer people. From early on, it became clear that in our family hierarchy, Brandon's achievements received standing ovations, while mine earned polite golf claps, if acknowledged at all. The contrast between how our parents treated us became obvious during birthday celebrations. Brandon's birthdays were major productions with dozens of friends, elaborate themes, and expensive presents. My birthdays typically involved a simple cake after dinner and practical gifts like clothes or school supplies. When I turned 13 and asked for a small party like Brandon always had, Mom said, "You're not really a party person, Lloyd. We're just respecting your personality." Sports victories versus academic achievements showed the disparity even more clearly. When Brandon's baseball team won the regional championship, our parents threw a backyard party, invited the whole team, and Dad talked about it for months. When I won the state science competition in 8th grade, Mom put my certificate on the fridge for a week, before it was replaced by Brandon's team photo. Even family vacations revolved around Brandon's interests. We attended baseball camps where Brandon could train while I sat in the bleachers reading. We visited colleges with strong athletic programs when Brandon was looking, even though most were out of our financial reach without scholarships. My suggestions for museums or national parks were usually vetoed for being boring or too educational. As the years passed, I carved out my own territory in academics. If I couldn't get the same emotional support and enthusiasm from my parents, at least I could excel in my own way. I maintained perfect grades, joined academic clubs, and built relationships with teachers who recognized my potential. School became my sanctuary, the place where my achievements actually mattered. Brandon initially didn't care about my academic success. To him, grades were just letters on a report card, not worth much attention. But as high school progressed, something changed. When relatives or family friends would comment on my academic achievements, I noticed Brandon's smile tightening. When a neighbor asked if I might be valedictorian someday, Brandon interrupted to talk about his latest game. His resentment grew as my academic reputation expanded beyond our home. My parents developed a pattern of asking me to downplay my accomplishments around Brandon. If I got a perfect score on a difficult test, Mom would whisper, "Maybe don't mention this at dinner. Brandon failed his math quiz today." When I was selected for a prestigious summer academic program, Dad said, "No need to make a big deal about it. Your brother is having a hard time with college applications." By my junior year of high school, I had developed a clear understanding of the family dynamic. Brandon was the star, the one whose feelings and achievements mattered most. My role was to stay in the background, to achieve quietly without overshadowing him. It was unfair, but I convinced myself that college would be my escape. Once I left for university, I could finally be recognized for my abilities without worrying about Brandon's ego. I just needed to make it through high school without rocking the family boat too much. Little did I know that my parents' favoritism would extend far beyond emotional support and birthday parties. Their determination to keep Brandon on his pedestal would ultimately sabotage my future in ways I couldn't yet imagine. Senior year started with excitement and anticipation. After years of perfect grades, leadership in academic clubs, and strong relationships with teachers, I had positioned myself as the likely valedictorian. The guidance counselor's office became a regular stop as I researched scholarship opportunities that could help me attend college without crushing debt. "Lloyd, have you heard of the Westfield Foundation Scholarship?" Mrs. Patterson, my English teacher and academic mentor, asked one day after class. She handed me a brochure with elegant lettering. They award $250,000 to cover full tuition at any university in the country. Only 20 students nationwide receive it each year. The Westfield Scholarship wasn't just about money. Recipients joined an elite network of past scholars, gained internship opportunities with partner organizations, and received mentorship from leaders in their field of study. It was exactly what I needed to break free and create my own path. The application process was grueling. I spent weeks crafting essays, gathering recommendation letters, and preparing a portfolio of my academic and extracurricular achievements. Mrs. Patterson stayed after school to help review my materials, offering feedback that strengthened my application. I submitted everything 2 days before the deadline, then waited anxiously for a response. When I brought up the scholarship at dinner that night, the reactions were typical of our household dynamics. $250,000? That seems excessive for just going to school, Dad commented, not looking up from his pot roast. I never needed college to make a decent living. Mom glanced nervously at Brandon, who was stabbing at his vegetables with unusual force. "Well, that's nice, honey, but don't get your hopes up. Those national scholarships are nearly impossible to get." Brandon finally spoke, his voice tight. "Must be nice to have teachers just handing you opportunities. Coach says I would have gotten that football scholarship to state if I hadn't injured my knee last season." Brandon's knee injury during the final game of his senior year had ended his athletic scholarship hopes. He'd been attending community college part-time while working at the local sporting goods store, a fact that our parents treated like a temporary situation rather than the reality it had become. 3 weeks after submitting my application, a formal letter arrived from the Westfield Foundation. My hands trembled as I opened it. "Dear Mr. Lloyd Adams, we are pleased to inform you that you have been selected as a finalist for the Westfield Foundation Scholarship." I had made it to the final round. Only 50 students nationwide were selected as finalists, and after in-person interviews, 20 would receive the full scholarship. The letter included details about my interview, scheduled for April 15th at the Foundation's regional office in Chicago, about 3 hours from our home. That evening, I shared the news with my family, unable to contain my excitement despite knowing their likely reaction. I made it to the finals for the Westfield Scholarship. They want me to interview in Chicago next month. Mom forced a smile. "That's nice, sweetie." "Chicago is quite a drive, though." Dad frowned. "Mid-April?" That's right. During tax season. I'll be swamped at work. Brandon pushed back from the table. Great. Another thing for perfect Lloyd to lord over everyone. He walked out of the dining room, slamming his bedroom door moments later. Mom sighed, giving me a look that somehow made me feel guilty for my achievement. You know your brother is having a hard time. His job cut his hours back, and he just found out he didn't get into the business program at State for fall transfer. The next few weeks were tense in our house. I prepared diligently for the interview, researching the foundation, practicing responses, and working with Mrs. Patterson on professional communication skills. Meanwhile, my parents seemed increasingly concerned about the family balance if I succeeded. One night, I overheard them talking in the kitchen while I was studying in the adjacent dining room. If Lloyd gets this scholarship, Brandon will never hear the end of it from the relatives, Mom said, her voice worried. He's already struggling with his self-esteem. Maybe it's time we let Brandon have something, Dad replied. Lloyd will be fine no matter what. He always lands on his feet. Their words sent a chill through me, but I dismissed my concern. Surely they wouldn't actively work against my success, even to protect Brandon's feelings. They were just expressing typical parental worry about sibling rivalry. The next day, I tried talking to them about how important this scholarship was for my future. Mom, Dad, I really need your support with this interview. This scholarship could mean graduating without debt and opening doors. I can't even imagine right now. Mom patted my hand. Of course we support you, honey. We've always wanted both our boys to succeed. Her reassurance felt hollow, but I accepted it, needing to believe my parents would ultimately want what was best for me. As the interview date approached, I focused on preparation and tried to ignore the growing tension at home. Brandon barely spoke to me, and my parents seemed to be having private conversations that stopped whenever I entered the room. Still, I remained optimistic. This was my chance to secure my future, and nothing would get in my way. April 15th arrived clear and sunny, a perfect spring day for the 3-hour drive to Chicago. My interview was scheduled for 1 in the afternoon, giving us plenty of time to reach the city without rushing. I woke at 6, too nervous and excited to sleep any longer. I laid out my best outfit the night before: charcoal gray slacks, a light blue button-down shirt, and the navy blazer I'd saved up for by tutoring middle schoolers in math. I had polished my only pair of dress shoes to a mirror shine and printed extra copies of my resume and academic portfolio. At breakfast, Dad made an unexpected announcement. I've decided to take the day off to drive you to Chicago. Can't have you taking the bus for something this important. Mom nodded enthusiastically. That's wonderful, Greg. Lloyd needs the support. Their sudden interest surprised me, but I felt relieved. Maybe they finally understood how much this opportunity meant to me. Let me iron that shirt again, Mom insisted, taking my carefully pressed button down. It got a little wrinkled in the closet overnight. While Mom ironed, Dad checked the car, claiming he wanted to make sure everything was perfect for the long drive. Their behavior seemed oddly attentive compared to their usual hands-off approach to my activities. As we prepared to leave, Dad announced a change of plans. I thought we'd take the scenic route through South Haven. It's only about 20 minutes longer, and the lake views are worth it. But we plan to take the interstate, I objected, anxiety flickering. It's more reliable for timing. Trust me, son. Dad insisted with unusual firmness. I know the best way. We left at 9:30, which still gave us plenty of buffer time. I brought my interview materials and a book to review key points during the drive. As we pulled away from the house, I noticed Brandon watching from the living room window, an unreadable expression on his face. Instead of heading east toward the interstate, Dad drove north. When I questioned the direction, he repeated his claim about the scenic route. I tried to relax, calculating that we still had ample time to reach Chicago before my interview. An hour into our journey, on a stretch of rural highway with few other cars, Dad suddenly frowned and gripped the steering wheel tighter. Something's wrong with the car, he announced, slowing down. It's pulling to the right. You feel that? I didn't feel anything unusual. But Dad insisted, pulling onto the shoulder of the road. He got out, inspected the tires, and opened the hood. Might be the alternator, he muttered. Though I knew enough about cars to recognize this made little sense for the symptom he'd described. Dad, we need to keep moving, I said, checking my watch. We can have it checked in Chicago if necessary. Can't risk breaking down completely, he replied, now looking underneath the car. Better to address it now. Minutes stretched into a half hour as Dad performed various unnecessary checks, periodically claiming he might have found the issue, only to shake his head and continue looking. My anxiety mounted with each passing minute. We should call for help, I suggested, reaching for my phone. My pocket was empty. I think I left my phone at home, I said, panic rising. Can I use yours? Dad patted his pockets with an exaggerated motion. Must have left mine on the charger. There's a gas station a few miles ahead. We'll drive slowly and stop there to call for help. We crawled along at 40 miles per hour for another 20 minutes before reaching a small gas station. By now, it was 11:30, and my window for reaching Chicago on time was closing rapidly. Dad spent another 15 minutes talking to the confused gas station attendant, who found nothing wrong with our perfectly functional vehicle. Finally, Dad agreed to call roadside assistance, but insisted on using the gas station's landline rather than asking to borrow anyone's cell phone. They'll be here in about 30 minutes, he announced after the call. When assistance finally arrived at 12:20, the mechanic found nothing wrong with our car. Everything looks fine to me, sir. You're good to go. We finally continued toward Chicago, now clearly going to be late. I sat in silence, a horrible realization dawning on me. This wasn't bad luck or poor planning. The car trouble had happened at too convenient a time, and Dad's behavior was too strange to be coincidental. We arrived at the Westfield Foundation building at 1:45, 45 minutes after my scheduled interview time. The receptionist gave me a cold look when I explained who I was. The committee waited 30 minutes, Mr. Adams. They've moved on to other candidates. Her voice was professional but unsympathetic. However, Dr. Williams has agreed to see you for a abbreviated interview as a courtesy. You have 15 minutes. The interview was disastrous. Instead of the planned hour with the full committee, I had a rushed meeting with just one member. I couldn't showcase my prepared materials, and my explanations about car trouble sounded like poor excuses. Dr. Williams's expression made it clear that punctuality was considered a reflection of character for Westfield scholars. During the silent drive home, Dad occasionally offered fake consolation. These things happen, son. There will be other opportunities. I said nothing, my suspicions growing stronger by the minute. When we stopped for gas, I searched the car while Dad was paying inside. In the glove compartment, tucked under the vehicle manual, I found my phone with several missed calls from the Westfield Foundation. In that moment, all doubt vanished. This hadn't been bad luck or poor planning. My own father had deliberately sabotaged the most important opportunity of my life. The forgotten phones, the unnecessary scenic route, the fake car trouble, all carefully orchestrated to make me miss my interview window. The betrayal cut deeper than I could have imagined. My own parents had actively worked to derail my future, all to protect Brandon's ego. The scholarship that could have changed everything had been stolen from me by the people who should have been my biggest supporters. When we pulled into our driveway around 6 that evening, I noticed Brandon's car parked out front. He usually worked Friday evenings at the sporting goods store, but apparently not today. As we entered the house, an unusual scene greeted us. Mom and Brandon were in the living room, a homemade cake on the coffee table reading, "Congratulations, Brandon," in blue frosting. "What's going on?" Dad asked with unconvincing surprise. Mom beamed. Brandon got accepted into the business program at State. They reconsidered his application after Coach Taylor made a call. Brandon smiled smugly, but had the decency to look slightly uncomfortable when he saw my face. The timing was too perfect, the celebration too ready. They had known exactly when we would be home. "You did this on purpose," I said quietly, my voice trembling with anger. You deliberately made me late for my interview. The room fell silent. Mom's smile faltered. What are you talking about? Dad asked, but his eyes wouldn't meet mine. The scenic route. The mysterious car problem that the mechanic couldn't find. My phone that somehow ended up in the glove compartment. You planned it all to make me miss that interview. Lloyd, you're being ridiculous, Mom said, her voice sharp with defensive anger. Your father took a day off work to drive you. We've supported your academics for years. Tell me the truth, I demanded, looking directly at both parents. Did you sabotage my scholarship interview? After a long, tense silence, Mom sighed. We just wanted things to be fair for once. Brandon needed this win more than you did. Fair? I repeated incredulously. Fair would have been letting me have this one thing after years of watching you celebrate every little thing Brandon did while ignoring my achievements. Dad stepped forward, his expression hardening. Brandon lost his athletic scholarship because of his injury. He needed something positive in his life right now. You've always had everything come easy to you. Easy? My voice rose. I worked for years for this opportunity. I stayed up late studying while Brandon was out partying. I spent weekends on academic competitions while you went to his games. Nothing about this was easy except your decision to ruin it. Brandon shifted uncomfortably on the couch. Look, I didn't ask them to do anything. This isn't my fault. Did you know? I turned to him. Did you know what they were planning? His silence was answer enough. You're being selfish, Lloyd, Mom snapped. After everything we've done for you, this family has always supported your education. Ungrateful, Dad added. That's what you are. Completely ungrateful for all the sacrifices we've made. The argument exploded, years of resentment pouring out from all sides. I laid out every instance of favoritism I'd endured. They countered with accusations that I was jealous, selfish, and thought myself superior to the family. Brandon mostly stayed quiet until I confronted him directly. You really let them do this? Your own brother? He finally looked at me, conflicted. I didn't tell them to sabotage your interview, but I knew they were planning something. To make sure you didn't get that scholarship, and I didn't stop them. In that moment, something broke inside me. Not just my heart, but my connection to this family. These people who should have protected and supported me had conspired to destroy my future. I'm leaving, I announced, my decision crystallizing instantly. I won't stay another night in this house. Don't be dramatic, Mom scoffed. Where would you even go? I didn't answer, just went upstairs and began throwing clothes into my backpack. My mind raced with possibilities. I had some savings from tutoring, but not enough for an apartment. Maybe Jacob's family would let me crash temporarily. Or Mrs. Patterson might know resources for students in difficult situations. As I packed, Mom appeared in the doorway. Lloyd, stop this nonsense. You're overreacting. Overreacting? You sabotaged my future. $250,000 in connections that could have set me up for life. You'll still go to college, she insisted. There are student loans, other scholarships. That's not the point. You betrayed me. My own parents decided I didn't deserve an opportunity because it might make my brother feel bad. I called Jacob while continuing to pack, explaining the situation in rushed, angry words. His response was immediate. Come over. My parents already said it's fine. You can stay as long as you need. Dad appeared, as I was zipping my backpack. You walk out that door. You're showing exactly how little this family means to you. The manipulation was so transparent it almost made me laugh. This family showed me exactly what I mean to you today. I continued gathering essential items. My laptop, school documents, the cash from my desk drawer. Mrs. Patterson texted back, offering to meet tomorrow to discuss scholarship alternatives. At least some adults in my life were willing to help rather than hinder. As I prepared to leave, Brandon came to my room. For once, He looked genuinely remorseful. "I'm sorry," he said quietly. "Not entirely for what happened, but for my part in it. I was jealous, Lloyd. You always were the smart one. And when my knee blew out, it felt like I had nothing left. That doesn't justify what you all did. I know. But they really do love you. They just—" He trailed off. "They just love you more," I finished for him. "It's always been that way. I've accepted it. But I won't let you all sabotage my life because of it." I carried my bags downstairs. Mom was crying now. Dad looked angry, and Brandon stood awkwardly by the stairs. "If you leave like this, don't expect us to bail you out when things get tough," Dad warned. Mom grabbed my arm. "We're your family, Lloyd. Everything we've done has been for this family." I pulled away gently. "No. Everything you've done has been for Brandon." I was just expected to understand and step aside. As I walked out the door, Mom called after me. "After everything we've sacrificed for you, you're so ungrateful." That word ungrateful echoed in my head as I walked 6 blocks to Jacob's house. Ungrateful. For what? For years of being second best? For having my achievements minimized? For having my one big opportunity deliberately destroyed by the people who should have championed me? Jacob's parents welcomed me without questions, setting up the spare room and assuring me I could stay as long as needed. That night, lying in an unfamiliar bed, I made myself a promise. I would succeed, despite what my family had done, and I would never again depend on people who could betray me so completely. Jacob's family generously let me stay in their guest room through the end of high school. His parents, unlike mine, treated my academic achievements as something to be celebrated rather than hidden. Their home became a sanctuary where I could focus on salvaging my college plans without the constant undercurrent of family tension. The Monday after leaving home, I met with Mrs. Patterson in her classroom after school. Her outrage on my behalf was validating after my parents' gaslighting. "What they did was inexcusable, Lloyd," she said firmly. "But we're not going to let this derail your future. There are still options." Together, we identified several smaller scholarships with upcoming deadlines. None compared to the Westfield opportunity. But piecing them together might make college financially feasible. Mrs. Patterson even wrote a letter explaining my family circumstances to accompany my applications, lending her credibility as a longtime educator to my situation. I also found a job at the local library that worked around my school schedule. Between shelving books and helping with the children's reading program, I earned enough to contribute to Jacob's family for room and board, maintaining my dignity while accepting their help. My parents made several attempts to contact me those first few weeks. Mom left tearful voicemails claiming I had torn the family apart. Dad sent texts, alternating between demanding I stop this childish behavior and offering half-hearted apologies that always included justifications. Brandon reached out once, awkwardly suggesting family counseling, but backed off when I pointed out that our parents still refused to fully acknowledge what they'd done. By graduation, I had cobbled together enough partial scholarships to cover about 60% of tuition at State University. Not my dream school, but a solid institution where I could get a quality education. Mrs. Patterson surprised me with an additional scholarship from her alumni association, specifically for students demonstrating exceptional perseverance in the face of adversity. I graduated as valedictorian, delivering a speech about resilience and finding support in unexpected places that carefully avoided directly mentioning my family situation. From the audience, I could see my parents and Brandon sitting stiffly in the back row. They had arrived late and made no attempt to speak with me before or after the ceremony. That summer passed in a blur of working double shifts at the library and a local coffee shop, saving every dollar for upcoming college expenses. I moved into the dorms at State University that fall with mixed emotions: pride in making it despite the obstacles, anxiety about the financial challenges ahead, and lingering hurt from my family's betrayal. College presented its own challenges. While other freshmen worried about homesickness and doing their own laundry, I juggled full-time classes with nearly full-time work hours. I found a job at the university library that sometimes allowed me to study during quiet shifts. I picked up weekend shifts at a local restaurant where the tips helped cover textbook costs. During breaks when other students went home, I took extra hours wherever I could find them. Despite the heavy workload, I maintained excellent grades. My determination had only strengthened after what happened. Every A felt like a personal vindication, proof that I was worthy of that scholarship my parents had stolen from me. Contact with my family became limited to occasional strained holiday visits. These brief interactions followed a predictable pattern. Mom would act like nothing had happened. Dad would make awkward attempts at small talk about my classes, and Brandon would oscillate between defensive and apologetic. I would sit through dinner, answer their questions politely but briefly, and leave as soon as reasonably possible. During my junior year, I created what I privately called my Never Depend on Family Again fund, setting aside a small amount from each paycheck, no matter how tight money was that month. This emergency fund became my security blanket, growing slowly but steadily throughout college. When I graduated with honors 4 years later, my family attended the ceremony. They sat together in the audience, applauding politely when my name was called. Afterward, Mom insisted on taking photos, creating the illusion of family unity for her Facebook friends. Dad awkwardly mentioned he was proud before launching into a story about a client's son who had also graduated recently. Brandon, now working at a car dealership and still living at home, seemed genuinely happy for me, but also clearly uncomfortable with the tension. My first job after college was entry-level at a tech startup in Columbus, 3 hours from my hometown. The salary was modest, but it came with health insurance, and, more importantly, distance from my family. I found a small apartment, furnished it sparsely but comfortably, and began building my professional life. The early career years were challenging but rewarding. I worked long hours, volunteered for additional projects, and pursued certifications to enhance my skills. Each promotion and raise felt like further validation of my worth, things I had earned entirely on my own merit. As my career progressed, I moved to larger companies, each step bringing better compensation and opportunities. By 26, I had secured a position as a software engineer at a prestigious firm in Chicago, ironically the same city where my scholarship interview had been sabotaged years before. I bought my first home at 27, a modest but well-maintained condo in a good neighborhood. The day I signed those mortgage papers remains one of my proudest moments. Without family financial support or co-signers, relying solely on my own credit and savings, I had achieved a significant milestone of adulthood. Throughout these years, I built a network of true friends who became my chosen family. People who celebrated my successes without resentment, who offered support without keeping score. Jacob and I remained close, despite attending different colleges, and I gained new friends through work and community activities. I also found meaning in mentoring younger students from backgrounds similar to mine. Working with a local education nonprofit, I spoke to high school students about college preparation and scholarship opportunities, particularly focusing on those who lacked family support. Helping these students navigate systems I had struggled with brought a sense of purpose beyond my personal achievements. Therapy played a crucial role in my healing journey. For 2 years, I worked with Dr. Franklin, unpacking the complex emotions surrounding my family's betrayal. She helped me recognize that while I couldn't change what had happened, I could choose how it affected my future relationships and self-worth. Your parents' actions reflect their limitations, not your value, she told me during one pivotal session. The scholarship they took from you was just money and opportunities. The resilience you developed by overcoming this is something no one can take away. Through this work, I gradually moved from raw anger to a more nuanced understanding of my family's dysfunctional dynamics. This didn't excuse what they had done, but it helped me release some of the bitterness that had been weighing me down. I would never forget, but I was learning to move forward without letting the past define me. What I didn't realize was that my family's inability to respect my boundaries hadn't changed. They had simply been waiting for the right moment to reassert their expectations, and my growing success was about to make me a target once again. 6 years after college graduation, my life had found a comfortable rhythm. My career was thriving, my home was paid off ahead of schedule, and I had built genuine relationships with people who respected me. Though I maintained minimal contact with my family, limited mostly to brief calls on major holidays, the acute pain of their betrayal had dulled to a manageable ache. Then one Tuesday in March, an unexpected call from my mother disrupted this hard-won peace. "Lloyd, it's been too long since we've really talked," she began, her voice carrying that familiar mix of guilt-inducing warmth. "Your father and I would love to see you. We're actually planning to be in Chicago this weekend. Could we take you to lunch on Saturday?" Something in her tone raised my suspicions. "What brings you to Chicago? Can't parents just want to see their successful son?" She deflected. "The restaurant at the Palmer House at noon? We've made reservations already." Against my better judgment, I agreed. Perhaps time had genuinely changed things. Or perhaps I still harbored some childish hope for the parental relationship I deserved but never had. Saturday arrived, and I found myself sitting across from my parents in the elegant restaurant. Mom had aged noticeably, her hair now completely gray, though perfectly styled. Dad looked much the same, perhaps a bit heavier around the middle, his demeanor still carrying that mix of authority and awkwardness. "You look well," Mom said, studying me. "That suit must have cost a fortune." "Professional appearance matters in my industry," I replied neutrally. "The company must be paying you well," Dad commented, scanning the wine list despite knowing he'd order beer. "Technology seems to be where the money is these days." The initial conversation remained superficial. They asked about my job, commented on Chicago's architecture, and shared sanitized updates about relatives. I answered politely but volunteered little additional information, waiting for whatever real purpose had brought them here. After our entrees arrived, Mom finally broached the actual topic. "How is Brandon doing?" "Have you talked to him recently?" "Not for several months," I admitted. Our last interaction had been a brief text exchange at Christmas. "He's had a difficult few years," Mom said, setting down her fork. "The dealership let him go last year during cutbacks." "I didn't know that," I said truthfully. "He's had several jobs since then," Dad added. "Nothing has really stuck. The economy, you know." I nodded noncommittally, sensing the conversation's direction. "The good news," Mom continued with forced brightness, "is that he's finally found his passion. He wants to open a sporting goods store, focused on local teams and custom equipment. He's got it all planned out." "That sounds like a good fit for him," I offered cautiously. Dad cleared his throat. "He needs startup capital. Banks won't lend to him because of some credit issues from a few years back." And there it was. The real purpose of this lunch. "We've put in what we can," Mom said, "and your Uncle Thomas is contributing. But there's still a significant shortfall. 75,000, to be exact." I set my fork down carefully. "And you're telling me this because you're his brother," Mom said, as if this explained everything. "Family helps family. We know you're doing well financially," Dad added. "This could be an investment opportunity for you too." "Let me understand this," I said slowly. "You want me to give Brandon $75,000 to start a business with no proven track record, after he's had trouble keeping regular jobs?" "Not give," Dad corrected. "Invest. And it's not just about the business. It would mean so much to him, to all of us, to have you involved in family matters again." The audacity was breathtaking. After sabotaging my education to protect Brandon's ego, after years of minimal contact, they expected me to hand over my hard-earned money to fund his latest venture. "I'm sorry, but that's not possible," I said firmly. Mom's expression hardened. "I don't think you understand how important this is. This is Brandon's chance to finally get established. He needs this." "I understand perfectly," I replied. "But I worked very hard for my financial stability. I'm not in a position to risk That kind of money. Risk? Dad's voice rose slightly. This is your brother we're talking about, not some stranger. After everything we've done for you, Mom added, eyes glistening with practiced tears. All the sacrifices we made for your education. I almost laughed at the irony. Sacrifices? Like deliberately making me miss the scholarship interview that would have paid for my entire education? That kind of sacrifice? You're still bringing that up? Dad scoffed. It was 10 years ago. Brandon needed our support then, and he needs yours now. My answer is no, I stated firmly. I wish Brandon well, but I won't be funding his business. My mother leaned forward, her voice dropping. The family has always protected its own, Lloyd. Even you. What does that mean? Dad picked up the thread. Remember that summer when you were 17, after the Westfield situation? Your grandmother's diamond earrings went missing during her visit. Everyone assumed it was that cleaning lady she had hired. I stared at him, genuinely confused. What does that have to do with anything? We never told the family it was you we found searching through her jewelry box, Mom said quietly. We protected you. The accusation was so unexpected and absurd that for a moment I couldn't respond. That never happened, I finally said. I never took anything from Grandma or went through her things. It would be your word against ours. Dad said matter-of-factly. Think how it would affect your relationship with the extended family if they heard about this, especially now that you're the successful one while Brandon struggles. The realization hit me like a physical blow. This wasn't just a request for money. It was a blackmail attempt, complete with a fabricated story they were willing to spread to the family if I didn't comply. Are you actually threatening me? I asked. My voice steady, despite my shock. We're simply pointing out that family protects family, Mom replied smoothly. You help Brandon now, and the past stays in the past. I placed my napkin on the table and stood up. This conversation is over. Don't contact me again. Lloyd, sit down, Dad commanded. You're making a scene. No. You made the scene when you decided to blackmail your own son. I placed enough cash on the table to cover my portion of the bill and walked out. Outside the restaurant, my phone immediately began buzzing with texts from Mom, alternating between guilt trips and vague threats. I blocked both their numbers as I walked to my car. Within days, my prediction came true. Relatives I rarely spoke with began calling and texting, asking strange questions about whether I had money troubles in my teen years, or if I had ever had sticky fingers. My parents had wasted no time spreading their fabricated story. Uncle Thomas called directly. Your mother mentioned something concerning about you and your grandmother's jewelry years ago. I find it hard to believe, knowing you. It never happened, I told him firmly. They made it up because I refused to give Brandon $75,000 for his latest scheme. The silence on the line spoke volumes. That, unfortunately, makes more sense, he finally said. As more calls came in, I realized this had gone beyond a simple family disagreement. My parents were actively trying to destroy my reputation with the extended family. For the first time in years, I felt that familiar combination of hurt and rage that had driven me to leave home a decade ago. After a week of these calls, I made a decision. The annual family reunion was scheduled for Memorial Day weekend at Uncle Thomas's lake house. Usually, I made excuses not to attend. This year would be different. This year, I would bring receipts. Memorial Day weekend arrived, with perfect early summer weather. Uncle Thomas's lake house in northern Michigan, with its sprawling deck and private beach, had hosted our family reunions for as long as I could remember. As I drove the winding road leading to the property, I felt a strange calm. The folder of evidence on my passenger seat and the digital backups on my phone represented not just my defense, but my final break from toxic family dynamics. Cars lined the long driveway when I arrived. I recognized my parents' sedan and Brandon's new truck. undoubtedly financed at a high interest rate. Taking a deep breath, I grabbed my overnight bag and the evidence folder before heading inside. The reaction to my arrival was immediate. Conversations paused as heads turned toward the door. Aunt Julia, always affectionate, hesitated before coming to hug me. Uncle Robert gave a tight nod instead of his usual hearty handshake. The whispers had clearly done their work. Brandon stood by the drinks table, looking uncomfortable. Mom was in the kitchen with my aunts, while Dad chatted with male relatives on the deck. All three glanced my way with varying expressions. Brandon's guilty, Mom's falsely cheerful, Dad's challenging. Throughout the afternoon, I participated in reunion activities without confrontation. I helped set up the volleyball net, chatted with cousins about their jobs and children, and assisted Uncle Thomas with the grill. All the while, I could feel the undercurrents. Some relatives were clearly wary of me, while others seemed confused by the tension. Brandon approached me while I was alone, getting a drink from the cooler. "I didn't ask them to do all this," he said quietly. "The money thing, yes, but not the stories." "Yet you didn't stop them either," I replied. "Just like with the scholarship." He had no response to that. Dinner was served buffet style on the sprawling deck overlooking the lake. As everyone settled into chairs and around tables with loaded plates, I decided the moment had come. I caught Uncle Thomas's eye and nodded slightly. He had been the only relative I'd confided in about my plans, and he gave me a supportive nod in return. "Could I have everyone's attention for a moment?" I asked, standing beside the main table. The conversations gradually quieted. My parents exchanged wary glances. "Lloyd, this is hardly the time for speeches." Dad interjected quickly. "Actually, I think it's the perfect time," Uncle Thomas countered, surprising everyone. "Go ahead, Lloyd. I know many of you have heard some disturbing stories about me recently," I began, my voice steady. "About stealing from Grandma years ago and other fabricated incidents. I'm here to clear my name and explain why these stories suddenly appeared." Mom stood up. "Lloyd, please. This is a family gathering." "Exactly. And family should hear the truth." I opened my folder and laid out the first document. This is a letter from my high school English teacher, Mrs. Patterson. Written recently, but describing events from 10 years ago. It details how my parents deliberately sabotaged my scholarship interview for the Westfield Foundation scholarship worth $250,000. Murmurs spread through the gathered family as I continued, presenting each piece of evidence methodically. This is an email from the Westfield Committee, noting my unexplained late arrival and expressing disappointment, as punctuality was considered an essential quality for recipients. I placed more documents on the table. These are text messages between my parents discussing their plan to delay me that day, which I discovered years later when Mom accidentally included me on a group text thinking it was Brandon. Dad stood now too. "This is ridiculous. Ancient history. Being dragged up because Lloyd refuses to help his brother." "I'm not finished," I said calmly. 3 weeks ago, I met with my parents in Chicago. When I refused to give Brandon $75,000 for a business venture, they threatened to spread lies about me stealing from Grandma unless I paid. I recorded that conversation. I played the audio from my phone. The restaurant background noise faint beneath my mother's clear voice. "We never told the family it was you. We found searching through her jewelry box. We protected you. Then my father's threat. It would be your word against ours. Think how it would affect your relationship with the extended family." The silence around the tables was absolute as the recording ended. My aunts and uncles exchanged shocked glances. Several cousins looked down at their plates, embarrassed to be witnessing this family implosion. "I never stole anything from Grandma or anyone else," I stated firmly. "This was a fabricated story created to pressure me into giving money after I refused. Just like my scholarship opportunity was sabotaged to protect Brandon's feelings when his athletic scholarship fell through." My mother's face had gone pale, while my father looked furious. Brandon stared at his plate, refusing to meet anyone's eyes. "Lloyd, enough," Dad finally exploded. "You've always been determined to paint yourself as the victim. Yes, we intervened with that scholarship because Brandon needed consideration too. Everything we've ever done has been to balance the needs of both our sons. By destroying one son's opportunity?" Aunt Julia asked incredulously. "Greg, that's not balance. That's favoritism. You don't understand." Mom insisted, tears streaming now. Brandon had lost everything with his knee injury. Lloyd would have been fine no matter what. He always lands on his feet. "So you deliberately sabotaged his future?" Uncle Thomas asked, his voice heavy with disappointment. "Diane, that's not what parents do." The family discussion exploded, with relatives taking sides and asking pointed questions. Through it all, I remained standing quietly, letting the truth work its way through years of family mythology. Surprisingly, it was Brandon who finally spoke up in my defense. "It's all true," he said, his voice cutting through the arguments. "They did sabotage Lloyd's interview. I knew about it and didn't stop them. And yes, they did make up the story about Grandma's jewelry to pressure him into giving me money." He looked at me directly for the first time that day. "I'm sorry, Lloyd. I've spent years being jealous of your abilities instead of developing my own. I let them favor me because it was easier than working as hard as you did." My parents looked betrayed by Brandon's confession, but the damage was done. The family had heard the truth from both sons now, with evidence to support it. I gathered my documents back into the folder. "I didn't come here for revenge or to turn the family against you," I told my parents. "I came because the truth matters. I won't have my reputation destroyed, because I refused to fund Brandon's business after working my way through college without your support." I turned to the rest of the family. "I'm sorry you all had to witness this. I truly wish things had been different." With quiet dignity, I walked off the deck and down toward the lake, needing a moment alone. Behind me, I could hear the continued discussion, my mother's defensive crying, my father's angry justifications, and various relatives expressing their shock and disappointment. Uncle Thomas found me at the dock 20 minutes later. "Your parents are leaving," he said, sitting beside me. "Brandon, too. Most of the family is pretty shaken up by what they heard." "I didn't want to ruin the reunion," I said honestly. "You didn't. They did. Years ago, when they chose to treat you that way. And again, when they tried to manipulate the family against you." He put his hand on my shoulder. "I'm sorry, Lloyd. We all failed you by not seeing what was happening." Several other relatives came to speak with me as the evening progressed. Aunt Julia apologized for believing even part of my parents' story. Cousins I had been close to as a child reconnected, sharing contact information and making plans to meet outside of family gatherings. I stayed the night as planned, finding unexpected healing in the genuine conversations with family members who now understood the reality of my estrangement from my parents. In the weeks that followed, the family landscape shifted. Some relatives chose to maintain relationships with both sides, carefully avoiding the topic. Others took clear positions, with several aunts and uncles directly confronting my parents about their behavior. Brandon called me a month after the reunion. Our conversation was awkward but honest. He acknowledged his role in the years of favoritism and expressed what seemed like genuine regret. While I didn't expect a close brotherhood to suddenly develop, I appreciated his step toward accountability. My parents eventually sent a letter that contained words of apology, but still included justifications for their actions. "We only wanted what was best for the family as a whole," they wrote. Still missing the point entirely. I didn't respond. Through this experience, I learned several profound lessons that changed my approach to life. First, I realized that forgiveness and reconciliation are separate things. I could forgive my parents for my own peace of mind without resuming a relationship that remained toxic. Second, I discovered that family can be chosen, not just inherited. The friends who stood by me, the mentors who guided me, and the relatives who supported me once they knew the truth formed a more genuine family than the one defined solely by blood. Most importantly, I learned to value myself, even when those who should have valued me the most did not. My worth wasn't determined by my parents' approval or my brother's jealousy. It came from within, from the person I had built myself into despite the obstacles placed in my path. Today, I continue building my life on my terms, surrounding myself with people who celebrate rather than sabotage my success. I maintain connections with the family members who showed me respect and understanding. As for my parents and Brandon, I wish them well from a distance that protects my hard-won peace. Have you ever had to create boundaries with family members who couldn't celebrate your success? How did you handle that situation? Let me know in the comments below. And if this story resonated with you, please like, subscribe, and share it with someone who might need to hear that they deserve better than what they're getting from toxic family relationships. Thank you for listening to my story, and remember that sometimes the greatest act of love toward yourself is walking away from those who can't love you properly.